Okay, we are live. So, hello, Lomit. Welcome back.
Hey, Paris. Good to be back. Episode
Yeah,
number 4. We're on a roll here.
yeah. How was your weekend? How was the start of your week?
It's been good. Yeah, it was a good weekend, and the week's going well so far. How's yours?
It's pretty good. We have a bunch of holidays here in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
So there was a holiday on Friday, and no, I'm sorry, there was a holiday on Monday of this week, and then there's another holiday on Wednesday. So it kind of wrecks the week from a productivity standpoint because a lot of people wind up some of them take off the whole week or at least 3 days. So, um, but it's like this every year here in May. There's two holidays in the first week of May.
Kind of like, because I know in England they have like May Day and you get the Monday off as well. So you get the long weekend, but not over here in the US. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the first one coming is Memorial Day
Yeah.
at the end of May.
Yeah.
The official start of summer. Yeah. So how are things going at TYB? Is it a startup vibe there, or what's it like?
Yeah, things are going well. It's definitely a startup. It's like a high growth startup, so there's always a lot of things going on. But the exciting thing is, ultimately, we work with a bunch of brands, right, that are looking to evangelize their community, right, to become the greatest like distribution channel for content and co-creating new products and writing reviews. And I feel that is really working well. For a lot of the brands we work with, that really go all in on community are really seeing profound results right now. And especially, the big difference is, paid media continues to go up, right? So the question is, the more you can get, a channel that you can own and control, where you're not at the mercy of different algorithms on different paid channels, the more control you have, right? And I think that's definitely working out well.
Yeah. Great. Well, on my end, we continue plugging away at GEOforge.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm with the content repurposing and distribution, getting back into LinkedIn a lot more heavily. And one of the things that I'm experimenting with is repurposing every blog post as both a LinkedIn article and then actually putting that into a LinkedIn newsletter, and then separately creating a YouTube video using Google Notebook LM their video capability. And so I'm just about 2 days into that. But the theory there is that citations with, the GEO citations that's the new game now. And the YouTube is the largest cited source for Google AI overviews and Google AI mode. I think the numbers are about 20% of all citations in Google AI overviews is coming from YouTube. So that's one really good reason to create a lot of YouTube videos. And then LinkedIn articles, not posts, but LinkedIn articles, the static articles that can be crawled,
Yep.
LLMs, those also have a very, very high, especially with B2B, have a very, very high citation count. I think maybe second only to Reddit. Reddit is, I think, number one. And I haven't really fleshed out a full Reddit strategy yet, but I'm trying to really maximize the surface area of every piece of content. So the blog, it's a new website, so we're not getting great crawling and indexation yet, but everything gets repurposed on LinkedIn and YouTube now. So I hope that's going to be worth it.
That's amazing. One thing I've found, and I've been writing LinkedIn articles for like 4 or 5 years now, right? But I created like a newsletter, so I've had a regular cadence of publishing content in long form on LinkedIn. And what I found, just to echo what you were saying, a, a lot of my content is showing up on citations, especially on Gemini. I see a lot of that content showing up around areas that I really write about, which is around, marketing growth, startups. So, which has been great, because so the other thing that I've started doing, part of it is just taking a lot of like the long form content that does well, and similar to what you're talking about, turning it into more shorter posts on LinkedIn, and because a lot of that content is kind of evergreen content as well. So I've been doing a lot more of that, and being able to schedule a lot of those posts, and that's really been working well. Like, I've been getting a lot of views. But the other thing that I found on LinkedIn, ironically, because I belong to a lot of different groups as well, like, there's digital marketing groups, there's CMO groups. I never used to publish or post a lot on those groups, but now that I have all this content, I've started publishing into those groups, and I'm getting huge reach on those groups. Like, I mean, those groups have on average, let's say, a couple of 100,000 members to, the biggest group has about 1.7 million members. And, just republishing content into those groups and just asking some thoughtful like questions for the groups to engage with. I mean, that's driving on average, just as an example, like I don't know what people consider good or bad, but getting like 30 to 50,000 views and impressions and hundreds of engagements. That's kind of what I'm getting in these groups. So I don't know how many people are really doing that on LinkedIn, but that's definitely another avenue that is untapped potential that I've been doing more of, and it's working. Another thing, just to add, the number one source you mentioned is Reddit. I haven't done much on Reddit, so I've started playing around with Reddit a little bit more this month, and predominantly I'm just going into like subreddits where people are having conversations, around topics that, I can add some value to, whether it's around marketing, growth, or startups. But, it's funny. I mean, I just started doing this yesterday, and, it's kind of addictive because it's really nice when you get that feedback loop so quickly. Like, I've just been, just sharing my own POV, and I'm getting like, tens of upvotes, and it's that dopamine hit, right? You keep getting notified that people ask, comes, and suddenly out of nowhere, like, my responses are like bubbling up right to the top on these threads that have been around for maybe, let's say, a couple of months, and those threads are feeding into LLMs. So that's interesting. That's another angle that I'm able to like, because I feel like ultimately we're all creating this identity graph around all of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what LLMs are going to trust. So, on LinkedIn, I definitely, have a lot of trustworthy content that's feeding into this. Hacker Noon, I'm now, believe it or not, Paris, I'm like the number one writer, my content, on Hacker Noon. And that's another like, high domain trusted source that I've found a lot of content showing up in LLMs.
Yeah, it's very high authority. It's been around forever.
And then, I feel, that, and then the fact, obviously what we're doing and what I've done on TYB's blog, where I'm publishing a lot of content under my name, a lot of that content is starting to show up, or will show up, because it's got more of a trust signal around who's writing it, right?
Mm-hmm. I've got a question for you on Reddit. So how was it? Is your Reddit profile somehow influenced by your authority in other platforms like LinkedIn? Because do you have the same amount of followers? How is it that you were able to get such virality so quickly with Reddit being new to the platform. I mean, were you able to leverage in some way your authority in LinkedIn or HackerNoon or other
No, ironically, I just linked. Well, I don't really know, but you're bringing up a good point. Like, um, I just connected a couple of my social handles on Reddit. Yesterday, I haven't done that. I've just pretty much just connected my LinkedIn, my LinkedIn and my blog, and both of those, I've got a lot of content. Since I've linked those, I feel like on Reddit, authenticity and trust is really important. And none of the things that I'm writing about is self-promotional in nature. It's just adding value and my perspective to questions like, people are asking around, one of the questions was around how to build a personal brand on LinkedIn. That's pretty much, I have a pretty good point of view on that. And so I wrote some responses and it created a whole not viral, but a spiral of comments and questions, 4, 5, 6 threads long. And, people could see what I'm not saying because I never said, how many followers I have on LinkedIn. I never said anything like that, but I connected my LinkedIn thing on my profile. So I'm sure people probably went there and saw, well, this person obviously knows what he's talking about. And so I feel that is probably feeding into it.
You don't think it was the Reddit algorithm? You think there were people that were seeing your comment and then checking you out and seeing?
I think so. Yeah. Yes. So, and the reason why I'm thinking that's my hypothesis is because I have tried to respond to a couple of threads on Reddit yesterday, and I just started doing this yesterday. Just learning about Reddit, and they never published my responses because they said that that my profile is still really new, and it needs to be on for like 7 days or. I don't know, but the idea is, I'm still in that kind of, with certain subreddits, I think they set different settings in terms of who can post or who can't post. And so if you're like a new person coming into the community, I don't think they allow you to post within a certain time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in not a penalty box, but a sandbox.
I am. Yeah. I'm in a sandbox.
You're held out of the game for a few days.
Yeah.
I was looking at streaming this LinkedIn Live. I was looking at streaming it also to YouTube. And I set up a YouTube account this week for GEOforge. So they have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And there was a holding period of like 36 hours before you could stream to a new channel. And they just force you to wait for no particular reason. And they even give you a countdown timer when you can start streaming.
And I think that kind of feeds into, part of it is just bots, right? If you get a lot of bots now that are trying to create accounts, putting it into a penalty box, it's one way to just ensure that it's real humans or whatever, right? So makes sense. But I feel like, the exciting thing is, and the challenge is, there's a lot of tools to play with now. And the question is, where do you prioritize? And I'll give you another example. I've been doing a little bit on Substack. I don't know if you've done much on Substack.
I have an account, but no.
Yeah. And ironically, I thought I would have got some benefit on Substack because of, all of the other content that I've done everywhere else. And I created my profile that talks about that. But I haven't really gotten any favor with their algorithm yet. I posted some really compelling content, which, as an example, when I post on LinkedIn, I get at least a minimum of a couple of thousand views pretty quickly. I've got very little. And so what I've started doing on Substack is, instead of posting now, I'm just going and commenting on other people's posts that are relevant. And that's at least getting me some visibility of people starting to follow me on Substack, and that's what I kind of took that thing to Reddit, where I started I'm not posting anything. I'm just commenting, and I remember talking to someone at Reddit, And the idea is to sort of, think of being invited to a party, and, you don't want to be the loudest at the party. You just want to be, a gracious guest and just get to know people first before you start talking. And so that's kind of my strategy on Reddit. So it'll be interesting anyway, as we continue to do more of these, to see if any of that stuff on Reddit starts showing up as well.
Yeah. I'm right now a little torn between how much time I should spend replying to threads or starting my own threads, because I think I have some good, intriguing conversation starters. I haven't really tried it yet, but I think I'm gonna shift my strategy over a little bit to posing some interesting questions. I heard a great question today on a podcast, and I'd love to hear your answer to this. So imagine that if you had a certain amount of money to invest.
Yeah.
And you have to invest it all, 100% of it, into one of the 3 upcoming IPOs: SpaceX, Anthropic, or OpenAI. So assume that all 3 of those companies are going to IPO this year. They probably will. SpaceX is probably first, Anthropic is probably second, and OpenAI is last. But the timing doesn't matter. So you have, let's just say you got $500,000.
Yeah.
And it has to go all into one. Which one would you choose?
So for me, it would be Anthropic, and the reason why, it's very simple, because right now, no matter what happens to the economy, whether things go up and down, the more you're tied to doing B2B versus B2C, you're going to be able to at least, get some kind of shield against, what's happening at an economic level, because business still have to continue to invest and grow and find efficiencies. And I think that's the big difference between, what OpenAI has done. OpenAI's big strategy was to go B2C, right? And, they've got a lot of users, right? But
I think they're almost at 1 billion. They're still at 900 and something million weekly actives.
Amazing. But having worked in a lot of like B2C businesses, especially subscription, because that's ultimately their business, right? Now, converting free users into subscribers, that's the biggest challenge, right? Especially when the free product is good enough, right? So the question is, like, how much are they going to start metering that, or really put in, friction in place to really force people to start paying, right? And that's going to, and there's consequence. But I feel, with Anthropic, they went direct B2B, right? And they've owned that domain. They're owning that lane now. And with having more and more businesses using them, their models are so much more sophisticated, right? For a business to business enterprise. And those businesses now, for the most part, I feel like the market share that they've built up, right? That's the biggest moat, right? So in terms of, where I would invest, the question is, like, which of those 3 businesses are going to have the most value in the next 10 years? I feel, one that's more focused on B2B. Space is I don't really know, because how many of us are really going to end up going to space, right? In the next 10 years.
Yeah. I guess a lot of it, it's very future thinking. If Elon Musk can get data centers up in space, and if he can build the Tesla robots to go fly those rockets to the moon and mine all these rare earths or whatever else from the moon and from other places, maybe Mars. But that's almost the sci-fi type.
That's sci-fi, but as you know, it's going to take a while to extract that value. And so, the big challenge is, once you do an IPO, shareholders, for the most part, start thinking short term than long term, right? Depending on how that mix is. And so, once you're publicly tradable, and you have this long vision. I mean, Amazon was great. I mean, even though they weren't making money, but they were growing at such a compounding rate that people stuck with them. But with
Yeah.
SpaceX. Like, how many people are going to stick with that, without starting to drop, and start selling or day trading on those shares or whatever? So I assume
Yeah.
there's a lot of volatility. ChatGPT obviously is, it would be a strong contender for me as well. But you told me to pick one, so I had picked the other one.
Yeah. I mean, OpenAI is probably a good bet because I think that
Yeah.
they're gonna split the consumer market with Google, and the
Yeah.
consumer market's gonna be massive. But
Yeah.
Google is always gonna have an advantage of having a vertical infrastructure. They've got their own data centers. They've got their own chips. They're gonna keep developing that. They have great models also, and I think that they can subsidize it in ways that OpenAI can't, because Google has so much distribution and so much resources that they can. I mean, they have two cash cow businesses now. They have their ads business, and now the Google Cloud business is turning into a serious cash cow. I mean, this is now like they did their earnings call this past week, and I think they had something like 65% year-on-year growth from the cloud business,
Yeah.
and it's now like a 25 billion a quarter business, and so it's growing massively from a very high base. And so they've got these two cash cows that allow them to they don't need to go out and raise money. They can just invest internally. They're going to spend close to 200 billion on data centers this year, I think they've announced, and it's just hard. There's such a juggernaut. So I think that Google and OpenAI are going to they're going to be kind of the Coke Pepsi of the consumer AI market, and I think Anthropic's going to win B2B, and they're on their way. So Anthropic's going to own enterprise and B2B, which is going to be a massive market. And I think Google will have a share of Gemini, will have a share through Google Workspace, but I think that they're not going to be as heavy as a hitter as they will be on the consumer side. And so Google will take a chunk of each one, I think, B2C and B2B. I think OpenAI will be number one in B2C. But as you mentioned, with a free product that is going to keep getting better as the models get better, the free product keeps getting better. It's going to be very compelling for people to just stay on the free model and look at the ads. And this ad model is not proven yet at all, whether that can really be the kind of revenue driver that Google's ad revenue model is. I haven't even gotten into OpenAI's ad platform yet. We don't have access yet. But you can't target the way you can target in Google with specific keywords and audiences. It's much more of a black box. So I would go with Anthropic. My answer would be also Anthropic because there's another interesting fact here, which is some people think that Anthropic is going to go after the SaaS market and it's going to take over software.
Yeah.
And I think it probably will. But the software market is about 800 billion a year in revenue. That's everything. Salesforce all the way through to the entire SaaS market.
Yeah.
If you look at the labor market, and I think this is in the U.S., the number is like $13 trillion, and half of that is knowledge work. So call it maybe $6 to $7 trillion is knowledge work, and that's what they're going after. They're not going after 800 billion software. They're going after 6 trillion knowledge work. And if they get even a small slice of that, and they can transfer that knowledge work into work happening in their platform to agents, then they're going to have a massive hit, I think.
Do you know, between you and me, the thing that people aren't really talking about, like, I don't know, other economies, but, the US economy is really driven through consumer spending, right? 70% of the GDP is really based on, people having jobs. And obviously when you have jobs here, you're going to spend money, right? And, with all of this disruption that's happening with AI, or at least, true or not, but companies are using that as a cover for having a lot of layoffs in these tech companies, right? And the people getting laid off in tech companies are obviously consumers that spend a lot of money because they make some good money, right? And so, that's gonna start impacting, the US and the world economy as more and more people start getting displaced, right? And that's the thing nobody's talking about. The question is, it's like right now, if AI is really out there to drive efficiency in companies and streamline operations and get more done with less, what's going to happen to the consumption side of those businesses, right? Because ultimately they're dependent on consumers. That's where I feel Anthropic is better placed, because businesses will continue to spend, but ones that are based on consumers, and if they don't really have the same amount of disposable income, then what that's going to impact a lot of economies, right?
Yeah. I think, well, I'm not in the US and you're a lot closer to it.
Yeah.
Is this starting to become more of the public discourse? Because AI wasn't even really a topic in the elections, 7-8 months ago. But now I have a feeling like this is all people are talking about. The data centers. Data centers are an easy enemy to target because it's a physical thing. It's a physical manifestation of all the evils of AI is right there. This huge data center sucking up energy and pumping out toxic fumes and then taking away the jobs. But what is your feeling? Are you on the optimistic side, or are you more cautious? Or are you anti? I'm sure you're not anti.
I'm not anti, but
you wouldn't be on this show doing this with me.
I mean, to be honest, I know there's a lot of talk around, the roles of what people do is changing, trying to be, less like grunt work and, in more around strategic problem solving and all of that, But the reality, Paris, of what's happening here is a lot of entry-level jobs are being eliminated. And just to give you an example, there's, like a lot of students, graduating from universities, huge unemployment rate, amongst that.
I've heard like 25%.
It's huge. And if those, what are those students going to do? They're going to have to do something to get by and survive, right? You can't just live with your parents for the rest of your life, right? Or depend on inheritance. So, I feel, that's, it's just like anything, if they starting off from a much lower cliff, then the trajectory of how their life and economic means and stuff is going to turn out is going to be a lot worse.
They're still graduating with,
they're
still mostly graduating with mountains of student debt too.
And in the US, it's crazy.
Changed. In fact, that's gotten worse.
Changed. It is, So the double whammy. So, and then you've got, a lot of like the middle managers, which, a lot of layoffs that are happening here. It's happening a lot. There's a lot of layoffs that happen, being here in Silicon Valley, but other tech companies. And a lot of the reasons are around, is that AI is making these companies more efficient. So they don't need a lot of middle management. They don't need a lot of people that are on the operational side, because execution and is moving more towards the agentic side, right? And so, the question is like where do those people, like what kind of jobs are those people going to be able to go into? Because what's happening now is there's more and more people competing for less and less jobs. And so, as an example, generally in your career, you're always looking to move to a bigger or better job opportunity, right? To move up on your career ladder. But now it's getting harder to move up. So what's happening is people that are losing jobs at different stages are moving down in terms of taking jobs that they may have been a little bit more overqualified for, and so that's closing the opportunities for people at the bottom to get into those jobs. Everything's getting squeezed at different levels now.
It's going to be pretty uncomfortable for a while. I do think it's going to shake out. I am still in the optimistic camp. I think in the long term, disruptive new technology, it's going to take a little bit of time for the new types of jobs to appear and to emerge. and there's been plenty of examples with going back to the Industrial Revolution, but this one might be a little bit different, and this one might force society, governments to really rewire the whole social order, tax system. If you do have such great efficiency that maybe people won't need to work in the future. People that want to work can work, but otherwise maybe there'll be the universal basic income or something like that. I think that's starting to. It sounded crazy a few years ago, but it's starting to make a little bit more sense now, I think.
But between you and me, I mean, the whole universal basic income, quote unquote, the socialist model. The reality is, most people want to work because you need to stay active. You need to keep your brain active, right? So,
Yeah.
It's like if that's one way of trying to stay healthy is just keeping your mental agility going, right? Not just physical, but mental. And so, I mean, if people just have nothing to do except, just consume, just become consumers, and that's going to have a backlash. I'm just putting it out there. Like mental health is just going to go in a whole, that's going to become a much bigger issue.
Probably.
So there's a lot of like things that are not really being thought through as far as the consequences of some of this stuff. And like you said, there's going to, I'm with you, there's going to be a shakeup, but the reality is we don't really know that shakeup because the Industrial Revolution, some of these other revolutions that happened before, it hasn't happened at this profound pace of what's happening right now, in terms of, the opportunities for people, because ultimately, people want to be able to have the ability to make a living and to know that, if you work hard, that there's hope for you to progress, right?
Yeah. Well, interesting. Well, Loma, this has been quite interesting. We kind of didn't really get to any of the stuff we had planned to talk about, but I guess in the last few minutes, I want to ask you, just to pull this back to the theme of the show is GEO. And the GEO journey that we're all on here. And we worked a little bit with the platform. Well, where are you? I mean, what has happened, and are you getting any closer to realizing more value in the GEOforge platform, or any other efforts that you're making to improve the AI visibility of TYB or your personal brand?
I feel the key thing isn't creating more, but creating better, if that makes sense. I feel like most people have the means to create more content, more stories, but that's not really the direction where we really want to go with Geo. We want to create better, more valuable, compelling content. And, at least from my experience, working with you and the team and the platform, is that, quote unquote, these agents that we have working, and I think we should definitely, show more about that next week. But, they definitely are starting to come up with content which is, really good first draft that doesn't require a lot more, as much time on my end as it has, doing this, previously. And so that just enables me, for example, just going back to what we talked about, I wouldn't have had time to start experimenting in Reddit if I was still doing a lot of this content and doing 2 or 3 drafts of edits, right? So now that GEOforge is able to get me much better content that requires, less of my time to edit and start publishing, gives me more time to start looking into where else, we TYB and myself should be focusing to try and help, get more distribution around content. So Reddit could be one place, Substack could be another. That now I have more time to really look into that. But the bigger question is, and this is where I will kind of lean on you and GeoForge is to help start tracking and measuring, like, is our share of model and voice going up as well? Yeah.
Yeah, we need to get into that. I think
Yeah.
Tracking the prompts. Our platform gives you initially 30 prompts, which is a representative set.
Yeah.
And it gives you can never get a perfect picture of your AI visibility because there's an infinite long tail of questions and prompts people could ask that could imply where you would want to show up. But the key is to try to get a really good representative sample and then to do enough iterations or runs of that prompt so that you get confident that you are showing up X% of the time for across that set of 30 prompts. And that's one of our modules, which is called GEOforge. We can set this up actually this coming week and look at that next time. It'll help you establish the baseline of what is the brand visibility for that representative set of 30 prompts. And then you at least have a starting point, a baseline that if it's 10% or 15%, okay, fine. Let's start inching that up and let's get it to 20, 30%. And that doesn't necessarily correlate perfectly to sales pipeline or revenue, but I think it's right now in this space, this new channel of GEO or AEO, I think that this is the main KPI that people are gravitating towards is this share of voice. It's your brand visibility relative to your competitors for a set of prompts. And I think that the real ROI, though, which people are not talking about, is self-reported attribution, where you put that question in the forums, whatever type of site. If it's B2B, then it's probably lead generation based. And the first form that they fill out, whether it's to download something or if it's to book a demo call or if it's to speak to sales, there really should be that question: how did you hear about us? And one of those options should be AI chat. And people will remember if they had a long conversation with ChatGPT that led them to your brand, they will remember that and they will self-report it accurately. And then later you can look at your CRM pipeline and you can filter that by the first touch point and you can see, okay, it's 20% or whatever the number is. This is how much of my sales pipeline was influenced through first touch by AI chat. And therefore, there's a positive ROI here. I think that's where the market, this channel will evolve towards. I think it's going to be more of this ROI, self-reported attribution, because share of voice, I think it's kind of flaky, really. It's arbitrary.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add is, so I did take your advice. I didn't really call it like AI chats, but I put in like article or blog content, something to that effect. Because not blog content, but I just put like article or content, and a lot of people are starting to pick that. So so I know that people are finding content. And most of the content is really being fed, into AI chatbots. So the other Paris that I would add to, I definitely agree with the self-attributed. That's an indirect signal. The other thing that we've been looking at, that I would encourage other people to look at, is just look at your baseline of direct traffic as well. Just people that come directly to your site or to your app store, because that is trending up for us, and organic, right, as well. So just
organic brand, people that are searching for your brand.
Exactly. And the brand, the the search happening around, for example, TYB brand versus non-brand, that mix is going up as well, in
Yeah.
favor of brand. So I feel there's, it's not going to be perfect right now, but there's indirect signals telling you that, the user journey is fragmented, and, just got to look at it in a couple of different ways. But the most important thing is, to continue to keep doing this, because and don't look at it the way you've looked at other channels, right? It's not going to be a last click sort of thing scenario.
No, it's not definitely not going to be a last click the way that classic search is
Yeah.
last click. Yeah. So, well, Lomit, I think why don't we wrap it up here, and
Yeah.
next time let's talk more about the share of voice, because between now and the next webinar, you and I will work offline to set up the share of voice tracking. Because I think we've been focused so far a lot on, first of all, the knowledge base with the Fireflies recordings. That's looking really good now.
Yep.
You got, I think, closing in on maybe 150 plus knowledge documents, and you've been uploading more on a regular basis. Keep doing that, by the way. That's keeping that health of that knowledge base going. And then on that foundation, then you have content generation from that knowledge base. And we're ironing out a few bugs with header sizes and things like that, but we're improving the prompts. We're improving the image generation prompts too. And the content's starting to look better. But now we've got to set a baseline for the share of voice and see where are we really starting off from, so that we can chart the improvement from some starting point. So that's going to be our homework for this coming week, is to get that in place.
Yep.
And I'll be reaching out to you over WhatsApp to work through that. And otherwise, any final thoughts or words to leave our audience with today?
I would just say that, we're just getting started here, but, the early signals are looking really positive for us, at least from, what we're doing at TYB. And I definitely encourage others, to start, getting into this, because it's going to be something where, the ones that, start moving into this early are going to see the benefits before everybody else gets into it. And, I feel, especially with, GeoForge, it just makes it so much easier to do it, right? It's kind of like having a GPS, kind of navigating you and prompting you, what to do to get the engine going. So really excited.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, Lomit, thanks again. It's been a pleasure as always. Having a really interesting conversation today, and it's a great time to be alive. A great time to be, both of us, in the prime of our careers, I believe, and driving new brands, new startups, using AI, and every day it's like there's some new discovery. Almost, it feels like, for me. So it's really the most exciting time in my career, I have to say, and I'm having a lot of fun. So
Likewise.
we're having you again, Lomit, and everybody will be back in a week for episode 5. And thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Okay.